Next, we're going to talk about factors that shift the supply curve. And remember, the supply curve is related using the law of supply. That means as price increases, quantity supplied also increases. A firm's goal, again, is to maximize its profits. Therefore, if the firm faces lower costs of production, they're going to be willing to supply more of their good at any given price. The first factor that shifts supply curves are changes in natural conditions. Let's look at the supply curve for corn. Let's say that the weather takes a turn for the worse come mid-July and we have a freeze. Not completely unheard of in the state of Michigan. But what's that going to do to the output of corn? It's going to injure some of the corn, and the farmers are going to see less output for what they've actually planted. Therefore, the supply of corn is going to decrease. In the future, farmers are going to be wary about, we might have another freeze again. Therefore, at any given price that they're going to be able to get on the market, they're going to be willing to supply a smaller quantity of corn. They don't want to run into the same pitfalls twice. Another factor that shifts supply curves are changes in the price of a key input to production. There are three main categories of key inputs to production. Labor, that would be the workers. Materials, that would be the stuff that you use to make your good or service. And machinery, which would be the machinery that are used to create your good or service. If you're making t-shirts, what will happen to the supply curve if the price of cotton, a key input in t-shirts, decreases? If the price of cotton falls, the supply of t-shirts will increase or shift to the right. This happens because as the price of cotton falls, the cost of making t-shirts also fall. Therefore, at any given price, t-shirt manufacturers are making a greater profit. And therefore, they're going to be willing to supply a greater quantity of t-shirts at any given price. A third factor that shifts supply curves would be the discovery of a new technology. New technologies generally reduce production costs, or else why would a firm implement them unless they had some other great benefits? Let's take a look at the market for computers. Over the past 50, 60 years, computers have become increasingly cheaper to produce because new technologies come along where we can make these, our computer components smaller, more cost efficient, not use as much energy, etc., etc. Because this technology comes along and makes it cheaper to produce computers, what happens to the supply curve? It shifts to the right, meaning that at any given price, firms are willing to supply a greater quantity of computers. The final factor that shifts supply curves are changes in government policies. Now, the government can do one of two things to a firm. They can either make things more costly by taxing their good or service, or they can make things less costly by giving a subsidy to the firm for producing a good or service. For taxes, we'll take a look at cigarettes. As the government taxes cigarettes more and more and more, the cost of producing a cigarette increases as well. Therefore, what happens to the supply curve? As costs increase, supply decreases or shifts to the left. That means at any given price, firms are going to supply a smaller quantity of cigarettes. For subsidies, we'll take a look at the market for milk. If government offers subsidies to the milk producers, what's going to happen to the cost of producing milk? That's right, it'll decrease. And if it decreases, that means costs are decreasing. What's going to happen to the supply of milk? That's right. Supply will increase or shift to the right. Those are the four factors that are going to shift supply curves. It all boils down to changes in cost. As cost increases, supply decreases or shifts to the left. As cost decreases, supply increases or shifts to the right. Remember that a supply decrease means at any given price, the quantity supplied will decrease, and a supply increase means that at any given price, the quantity supplied will increase. Next up, we're going to take a look at what happens when we put it all together.